Hey everyone, my name is Dave and welcome to the NTD Racing Speed Shop. One of the coolest things, again, about being a YouTube dude is that I get to test some really cool tools, and this time it's from BestArc. It is the BTC800DP plasma cutter, 80 amps. So this thing is gonna be really powerful, almost twice as powerful as my Razor Weld 45. Hopefully we'll be able to get to cut some really thick stuff with this. And then I've also got an idea, since this has got the 2T, 4T modes, I think I can set this thing up in my Langmuir Systems CrossFire XR. I've been really impressed with all of the plasma cutters from BestArc. I can't wait to see what this thing looks like. Let's go see what's inside the box. Okay, I already like this thing. I think it looks great. Let me show you why. Let's start on the backside. So looking at the backside, let's first talk about the power that's going into this thing. I'm going to be using 220 volt. This thing uses one of the NEMA 6-50. I think it's a 50 amp circuit in general. And here is what those look like. This is the adapter they give you in case you want to put this into your standard house outlet, which you can do. I do like these. Put these in your garage if you're building one. I use it on my compressor over there. I use it on my two welders over there. I use it on the CrossFire XR. I also use it on the Dragon A250 with a hypertherm. All the same connections for those. So that's the power gets in. Let's talk a little bit about how the air gets in. Well, they give you in the kit this hose if you want to somehow jimmy rig this thing onto your machine. I have a couple of these now since I don't use them. But what I really like, and other companies don't do this, is they give you a normal air hose connection. So this is the normal air that's coming off my compressor and going around the shop and coming over here. It has a filter on it also. To turn the machine on and off, you just hit this switch right here. Let's go ahead and check out the front of the machine. All right, as this thing comes to life, let's talk about some of the things that are connected here to the machine. You've got just a nice torch. I measured out the cord. It's about 16 feet long for the lead for this thing, which is pretty good for, I think, a budget plasma cutter. You have the ground here. It appears to be on a 10-foot lead. It seems like it could be a nice quality ground clamp there. You have some extra consumables that they came with it for the gun. This little roller thing here, I've never used one of those before, so I'm kind of excited to try that thing out, as it holds your torch height while you're cutting and also helps you make a straight line. So that'll be kind of neat to try that thing out. This thing connected up really easily. You got basically the torch that goes here. Something that's unique to this one as opposed to other ones that I've seen is that the torch goes here. Your on and off switch connects right here to turn the machine on and off. You got that little red one down here is where the pilot arc comes. So what is that pilot arc? Well, if older plasma cutters, when you hit the trigger, unless it was going to ground out to something, it wasn't going to create that plasma. But this thing right here, it will actually create a pilot arc. As you see, I'm going to hit the trigger and it'll start that arc to help you get that cut going. And then the ground. So it's really easy to connect up. Let's go around the horn here and talk about some of the things that it has a set. You have this function right here that says air and cut. And what that does is allows you to turn on the air, and you hear the air flowing now. And then now you can go in here, lightly pull this knob out, and then you can turn and set the pressure that you're going to be cutting at with this pressure regulator right here. And then you can go ahead and turn that thing off. And as the air is flowing, it's going to settle on that pressure. So you can be really precise on how much airflow you're going to get while you're cutting. It has a plate or a mesh mode. I haven't used that before. Maybe I'll try that on this video. You have the PA and PT. So the pilot arc, and what that's doing is saying that it's going to basically fire the pilot arc for 3 seconds before starting to cut. And then you have the post flow over here, which will do for 10 seconds after to cool down the consumables once the machine is done cutting. And then this last one over here is the 2T and 4T. So what is that? So if 2T means anytime you're using the torch, when you pull the trigger, the entire time you're holding the trigger down, it's going to cut. When you release the trigger, it's going to stop cutting. The 4T mode, when you hit that, now when you pull the trigger and release it, it's going to cut continuously until you pull and release the trigger again. Here's what's kind of cool about that. So I was saying there was something dangerous I was going to do with the plasma cutter. What I was kind of thinking I was going to do is I was going to see if I can mount this torch into the Langmuir Systems CrossFire XR and have it cut. And what I was going to do is just set up the program to where when it was ready to cut, I was going to pull the trigger while it was on the machine. Now, I'm not a big fan of reaching my hand into CNC machines. I think that's unsafe, but this thing's gonna allow me to do that because this right here is your torch on and off. And as you can see, I'm gonna pull this thing out here. If I can get this, there we go. It is just 2 wires in there. So basically this is just a circuit. This switch is open, I pull a trigger, it's closed. I release it, it's back open. And so what I can do, I think, is take this momentary switch I've got, hook some wires up to it, splice those wires into these wires, and when I push the button and close the circuit, standing over here while my torch is over there, I should be able to start the machine cutting, and I should be able to get a machine cut. So I will be using this remote button, I will be using the initial height sensing. I won't have torch height control, but I'm gonna try and just cut some small pieces into this. This is more than 3/4 of an inch. This is almost an inch thick piece of plate steel. I'm gonna try to cut into that. It'll be a really slow cut, and we'll see what kind of cuts we can get out of this. First, let's try that cut, however, with a hand torch, normally using the button and these rollers here to see what kind of cut we can get. And then let's go see what we can do with the Langmuir Systems CrossFire XR. All right, let's get ready to do some cutting. First, we're gonna do some cutting with a hand torch. I've got a piece of 1/4 inch here. This is 3/16. We'll do that one first. And then we'll go up to this one, which is 0.8 inches over 3/4 of an inch. That'll be last. We'll do that hand cut first. I set up this hand cut wheel torch thingy here. Basically, I use a little filler gauge, and inside the booklet here, the instructions, it said that the torch height during cutting should be at 5/64 of an inch, which equals about, I think it's 0.78. So that's what I have this thing set up to. We'll see how well that thing cuts. So in the booklet also there is the cut thickness chart, and it has the thickness you're gonna cut. It correlates that with some amperage. That chart is also handy over here on the top of the unit. Let's go ahead and get this thing turned on, set up, and let's start doing some cutting. Not bad. All right, not bad. Let's go ahead and check out some of the results. This was the first one. This is 3/16. And I was really kind of playing with the speed and the temperature. I turned it up higher than the recommended. I think I went to 45 or 50 or something like that. And I think I was going a little bit too fast and too slow and got a lot of dross. You can see how this is kind of a function of this little wheel thing. I'm not a big fan. I don't like to use this so much. I would rather drag the tip along a straight edge, and I find that's a little bit better results. I went up to 1/4 inch, and you can see it totally has the power to go through there. That was about like 55 amps on that, pulling by at a pretty good pace. But here was the impressive one. This is all the way at full throttle, 85 amps, greater than 3/4 of an inch plate still. Even though it's still pretty hot, but I mean, it is huge. and it cut through that like butter, going pretty slow. But now I want to see if it's going to cut if I hook this thing up to the Langmuir Systems CrossFire XR, because all these ripples that you see here are kind of caused by my hand just not being stable while I'm doing this cut. If I spin it around, here's a cut with the razor weld on a machine. You can kind of see it's such a nice clean cut, what you can do with a CNC machine. Can we do that with this? Let's go ahead and chuck this into the machine, and then I'm gonna go ahead and take this off like I talked about, and we're gonna go ahead and make a plug. I got some parts here. I just 3D printed this thing out. Let's see if we can't make this momentary switch turn the plasma cutter on and off. All right, let's check it out. Here is the button. I couldn't get to see all the way down in there without beating the button up too much. Anyway, it looks pretty good. Hit the button, it sends a momentary signal down to the torch fire there. I'm gonna turn it on, let it power up here for a second. Here it is in 2T, hit the button. Boom, there's that pilot arc. Let's go ahead and put the torch on the CrossFire XR. All right, this was the thing I just made on the 3D printer. Pretty cool. Let's go ahead and make the hole that we're going to cut in this 0.8 inch thick piece of metal. So I'm going to go over here to create a sketch. We're going to sketch on that X and Y plane, all plasma cutters, that's what you do. Now what's going to be kind of weird is I'm going to have to draw first a square. So I'm going to say hit the button G, which gives me a center rectangle. It doesn't matter what size it is. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to hit hotkey C, and I'm going to make a center circle. Let's make this circle 1.5 inches. How cool would it be to be able to drill a 1.5 inch hole in something? Yeah, I can make it 2 inches. Let's make it 2 inches, boom. All right, that will be the hole we're gonna cut. We're gonna extrude this thing, and just to make it look like the thing we're cutting there is 0.8 inches, that's what we're gonna cut a hole in. Now I'm gonna go from CAD, Fusion 360 CAD, over to Fusion 360 CAM, computer aided manufacturing, on the same thing. I'm gonna say set up. We're going to use the center as our box point. We usually use the side over here, but this time I'm gonna use the center so I can just center the torch on it. And this is where it's gonna basically start the program, or at least where I can zero it from. And I'm gonna say big hole, big hole. All right, okay to that. Now let's go over to cutting. Now we're not gonna use the razor weld 45, but I got to give it some kind of tool to use so I can make this tool path, and I'll show you what we're going to do with it here in a second. So there's a razor weld 45, and here's the thing, it says cut feed rate. Now the recommended was 4 inches per minute. Let's go ahead and do 4 inches per minute. We're going to cut on this thing right here, and then here is where we're going to help ourselves out. We're going to give ourselves a lead in radius, say 0.2 degrees. We're going to go 90 degrees, and then I'm going to try and fire it right somewhere near the center. Let's say 0.75. That's going to get us out here somewhere towards the center. And I'm going to say okay. And so it's going to give you the tool. It's going to generate the tool path here that is going to cut this thing. And there you see it's going to fire the torch. It's just fire it right here. It's going to cut towards the center, and then it's going to go off to the races all the way around, and then it's going to come out here. So we'll see how well it cuts. It's going to be cutting at 4 inches per minute. So let's go ahead now and create the G code from this. So here's the thing, though. I got to remember that's 0.63, but for this torch, they said they wanted a 0.078. So let's put 0.078 for the cut height. The pierce delay. Now this is where I got to give myself a little bit of time to hit that button. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a really long pierce delay. It's going to take about 2 seconds at least, I think, to get all the way through that piece of metal. We can up that pierce delay a little later on if this doesn't work. And there we go. We're going to go ahead and post it to my folder that's called test. I'm going to select that folder. We'll post it, and then now we're ready to go over to FireControl, and I'll show you how we're going to use that. So we have the big whole program loaded up in here, and you see how it's going to cut. You see it also loaded up on the CrossFire XR with the torch on there. Why is this going to work? Let's go and watch. I'll show you what's going to happen here. Is that the first thing that the torch is going to do when I say start is it's going to plunge all the way down, and it's going to touch the metal. There's a squat switch that's inside here that's going to sense that this thing is collided with something. It's going to go ahead and set that thing off, and it's going to tell the computer I've run into the metal, set my 0 point. From there, it's going to say I know where 0 is. It's going to raise up to a fire height for 2 seconds. It's going to fire the torch, and then after 2 seconds, it's going to drop down to 0.078 inches and go and do the full cutting program. Now remember that the torch is not actually connected to the machine. So in that 2 seconds after it drops down and raises back up to the fire height, I've got to hit the button and tell it to start the torch, let it cut the full program, and then turn it off. Now to make this work on the CrossFire XR, if you look back over here on FireControl, we've actually got to go in here, and where it has our torch height control, we have to turn that setting off, because if it doesn't see an initial voltage, it will stop the full program. So we turn that off, and then now all that we are using is the initial height sensing function of the CrossFire XR. Let's go ahead and make this cut happen. All right, if you don't think that's cool, we can't be friends. This is really awesome. This is the Langmuir Systems CrossFire XR with this plasma cutter in there, and all I used was this button here to start and stop the torch. Now, I was gonna try and set it up on the 4T where you push it and then it goes and push off. It didn't work right away. I could probably go back in there and try it again. Just when it was, what I was doing while the torch was supposed to be going, I was just holding the button down. The torch was firing. When I wanted to stop, I let go of the button and it stopped. Here's the results. This is almost 1 inch plate steel. This is enormous. And check out that hole. Sure, there is some dross on here, but to cut a 2-inch hole in 1 inch plate steel, I'm not an oxyacetylene guy. I guess you could probably do that. There was a little bit of dross to knock off of this thing, some big chunks of dross I knocked off, but here's the plug that kind of came out of there. And you could probably dial this in, with a little bit of working on the torch height and all that kind of stuff. But man, that's pretty awesome. And then, I wanted to test it out also on something a little smaller, like that 3/16 was not a great hand cut. This is the machine cut on 3/16. This is great. This is literally off the machine. There is absolutely, I wiped the water off, that was it. There is no dross on this pretty much at all, except for the entry and exit there for this piece. And then here's the hole. This is actually this would be the piece that you would normally throw away or whatever. Here is the hole of the part that you'd be using. Look at that. I mean, you can see little tiny dross there, but besides that, that is a great cut. That looks awesome. As good as any of my other plasma cutters and how well it does. Pretty impressive. And all with this pretty cool button. I like this thing. I'm gonna keep this. Huge thanks to BestArc for letting me check out this huge plasma cutter. And how cool is it that you can be cutting 1 inch plate steel on your Langmuir Systems CrossFire XR, CrossFire Pro, normal CrossFire. And at the time of this video, this plasma cutter costs $597 on Amazon. You can check out the link in the description below. And the consumable, 25 bucks, gets you 10 set of consumables for this plasma cutter. You really just can't beat the deal. And then also the fact it cuts 1-inch blade steel, which is amazing. Anyway, we do a lot of this stuff. I hope you like what you saw. Hopefully we earn your subscribe. And more importantly, when you do subscribe, consider hitting that notification bell. That's the only way I can guarantee you that you'll get a notification the next time we put out a video, and that will be next week. Can't wait to see you then. Take care of yourself.